Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 5th of February, comes to you from London. And what another night of turmoil. We've seen Bitcoin down a further 2%. We've seen the Nasdaq that had a bit of a bad night, and we've seen some of the Mag 7 selling off. No big surprises. We've talked about that, and gold and silver also selling off. The dollar has just held that low, so we are just seeing not a lot of great big moves in currency, but as I mentioned, Bitcoin is the real story there. And if we look, we've got these downside targets. We talked about these targets. They were activated at 85,000. We got targets to 69 and 54. The 69,000 one was nearly touched yesterday. We got to 70,000. We're finding support there. But if we look at the 60-minute chart, we can see here we've got downside targets on the short term as well. So this, you really cannot ignore that. And if you're trading Bitcoin, do use the 1 minute charts for the targets on those. And of course, you can use the targets on Bloomberg or on TradingView as well. If we look at the Nasdaq, this was the big story. Whilst we had this upside target, we talked about that bearish engulfing candle yesterday, and we had this downside target given yesterday, and so we really did know that we were going to see more downside pressure. We're below the cloud. In fact, that target was activated on the 3rd. So the really key thing there is we've had 2 days of this downward pressure. We're holding that low that we saw back on the 17th of the 26,648. These are the Linton levels, by the way, that just tell you that. So the key thing is we've got to see whether we hold that. And again, those levels are available on your Bloomberg or on TradingView. Now, we are seeing the futures up very slightly this morning, but it's looking very dead cat. And we are, again, just watching that the future situation, and we've got another new target that was given yesterday, so it really is putting pressure on the tech stocks, and we will look at the stocks in a minute, but we can see really that the picture is changing, and that means that other markets are starting to be affected. So we would not be surprised to see that, even the Sensex down 0.5%. That's quite key. The Aussie market actually has activated. We've got a downside target there. It was quite interesting. The Reserve Bank of Australia actually raised interest rates, which is quite unusual at the moment. And the effect of that, if we just look at Aussie dollar against sterling, the effect of that, the market was expecting it, and you can see that downside target was given at 205 to 192. We're currently sitting at 194. You just can't ignore the targets, and the short-term chart, we're waiting to see if we activate another one, and that is trending lower as well. So really quite key there, just watching what the targets are telling us. We've put out the energy call to clients this morning. So we covered that in more detail for our energy clients, looking at the call for today, running right through the energy mix. It's basically, the report was fairly neutral, crude and power, bullish on gas and bearish on carbon, just for the record. But you can get that report if you're an energy client. Just message me. So looking at some of the other things, we've seen some really big moves in some of the commodities. Cocoa lower, no big surprises there. We've got downside targets. The 60-minute chart, we've activated another downside target. Coffee, we're down 2.6%. We are seeing these targets playing through everywhere. And sugar, I did work with a sugar trading company in Australia last month. We are just seeing there again, we're nudging to new lows. Downside targets. Look at those train tracks, really quite significant there. And just waiting to see if we break to a new low. So not looking great there. Now the big one, of course, is gold and silver. If we look at gold, we are down slightly this morning. The 60-minute chart is really just where we're seeing that sort of failed recovery. We've got a new downside target, really a big challenge. One of the things we're working on, an update which will be going out for release probably next month, is back testing these targets. And trading gold, given the strength of the trend, just trading it long only with the targets, including the activated and negated targets, so one's not reached. We're seeing here just the equity line of that trading system on the 60-minute over the last couple of months. And we're seeing, these would have been the trades that you were taking with the targets, with your stops. So if you run higher than the target, you can stay in. And if you don't reach the target, you get out with a stop. It's absolutely essential. And we're seeing, and again, something we talk about in length in the money management section on our training course. But you can see here, where you had a little long trade, you had a target. That was the move there, but you've been stepped out of that trade, and so you're just waiting on the sidelines for the next upside target. So really quite interesting, and that's something that we're doing a lot of work on with clients in UpData at the moment. So we're seeing here that picture has just changed a bit, and it really has changed on silver. You can notice here we had downside targets, then upside targets. They were met, and then another downside target. That really just happened very, very quickly. So again, trading this long only, you would have been out with a stop loss before that move. So really quite key. Platinum also has given that signal as well. Now, if we want to just take a quick look at what's going on in bond markets, seeing the yields just falling off a little bit there in the daily chart, but we still have got that upside target, so we're not out of the woods there longer term. Apple bucked the trend yesterday. It was up 2.6%. That is recovering a little bit, but we've seen some really big falls. Amazon down 2%, not had a high since late October. Alphabet came out with good, strong results, but market is a little bit jittery about their AI spend, but we do have these upside targets. Again, if you go to the 60-minute chart, you've got the extent of the downside target. You can make a decision as to whether you want to stay in and live with that target. If it was a bigger downside target, that might affect your decision. Microsoft, that's been a really interesting one, making new lows there on the 60-minute and on the daily. That target given back in November now has been exceeded. That's bearish confirmation. Nvidia, what I've talked about a great deal, just waiting to see whether we break that 170 level, which will be critical. But that downside target is what we're watching. And we can see here the downside target on the 60-minute chart was given and actually just a little bit exceeded. So that's bearish confirmation as well. And Tesla, we're seeing here, downside targets, we're below the cloud short term. We are in a short term downtrend. Longer term, we've got mixed targets, but those downside targets are the more recent ones. So we really do need to keep an eye on that. In terms of the Dow 30, we had some quite big moves. We had 3M. They were up 5%. So we are seeing it's not a sell-off across the board. That's the daily chart there for 3M. We've got American Express. They were up 1%. Amgen were up 8%. We are seeing quite a mixed picture, and really we're seeing rotation going on. And of course, Walmart, which has been a star, making new highs, just pushing even higher. And that 60-minute chart on Walmart has been activated. So really quite key. Looking at the NASDAQ, if we look at the best and worst performers, we've got a few recoveries here. Starbucks, that's quite an interesting one. We look at the daily chart, those upside targets were met. That was quite a good recovery. The 60-minute chart, though, is more of a worry. So that that might be the extent of the recovery that we see there. We go to the downside and we see chips. I mean, advanced micro devices down 17%. Really big move there. And interestingly, we had that target already in place the previous day. Micron, they've been a big riser, and maybe we're just not getting to the target, and that will be a form of bearish confirmation. Downside target met there on the 60-minute chart. You really cannot ignore that, and that's really the key thing. So, and just keeping an eye on these targets is going to be absolutely critical. Seeing where the NASDAQ opens today is going to really be telling. And so watching that future is going to be quite key. We're up 0.5% at the moment. This is the 60-minute chart, but we are below the cloud with downside targets. So the key thing there is just keeping an eye on that. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.